Life Coaching with Alex Urbina, right here in your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS. Hanging out with Jasmine Urbina, my co-host. We're talking about vulnerability. And before we went to break, we promised that we were going to talk a little bit about some of the fears that comes up in a young adult. And you're what, 19 years old?
Yeah.
And as a 19-year-old, as you're struggling with trying to figure out, how powerful you are and trying to flap your own wings so that you can fly one day, there's some fears that are coming up for you. And that's all that fear is at the core. And so what could be manifesting in the home as a symptom is, you're short, you got a temper, you're irritable, you're blaming things. You just, those are some of the way that you could torture a family in the home is showing up like that, right? But underneath there's some fears going on. So what do you think? What could some of those fears be?
I guess my number one fear would just be not succeeding. I'm spending all this time and energy trying to reach my goal, trying to accomplish something, and never actually getting there.
Now, so as a life coach, I want to ask a few questions. Well, I guess as your father too, but I wear two different hats, and that's for me. I got to figure out sometimes when to take the hat off or keep it on. But the question is that when you say succeeding, do you think you're going to succeed just in a couple of weeks, or what is? Because seriously, as a kid, some of the kids growing up, they think like, I want to succeed now.
Yeah, we want it now.
And that's pretty realistic for you. When you grow up in a world of instant gratification like you have. You want to see results right now. Like, you don't realize that the old school comes from, we got to put in some hard work and some dedication, and we got to sacrifice. And there are going to be times where I'm going to have, $20 in my bank account, and I'm going to eat top ramen. And we're talking about years before you finally start to see some results. But you say you want to be successful now. You want to see some big results right here, right now. And that's what you're struggling with. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Just breaks it down. So you have an idea that you want to be successful now, and when you're not, you feel like a what?
A failure. And I feel like maybe I won't necessarily ever get there, and maybe I should just give up now. And I know that's not right. I know that's not really what I want, but sometimes when it comes down to it, like you said, like I'm sitting in my room all day and I'm thinking about all these things. Sometimes I'm thinking about tactics. How am I going to get what I want next? What's even my next goal? I need to think smaller. Sometimes I just want to give up. So
as a parent of a 18 and 19-year-old and a 25-year-old, and hearing you say that, I want to give you as a parent permission to go and check in with your kids periodically 2, 3, 4 times a week, if not a couple times a day, and pull them out of their room. If you're telling me you're in your room, you're beating yourself up and you're self-sabotaging yourself and your mind's playing games in yourself because you feel like you're not gaining progress, then I got to do more work. I need to be plugged in more and checking in on you some more and pulling you out and taking you for a ride and speaking more into your greatness. And I apologize for not doing that more, and you're gonna make me cry now. And I get to get that wake up call, and hopefully other people are looking and also checking in with themselves as a parent that your kids need you, especially now in today's world, that they're beating themselves up because they're not striving and hitting the mark of the expectations that you have. And you have some big expectations for yourself, girl. You may be powerful and you have some great potential, but success doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a 6 months. It doesn't happen in a year. But you'll be all right. You got some strong siblings and some powerful parents, and you'll be okay. You got some great foundation, and you got a good platform to launch from. Just keep believing in yourself and keep going after doing what you love to do. And you and your mom, your mom have told you that we're here to support you, and these are those golden years for you to go out. We want you to go try things and test new stuff, and this is the time to do that because we got your back right now. Now, when you're 30 years old, you're still hanging around at home. We're probably going to be like, hey, we need to sit down and have a serious conversation because for the last 11 years, you've been out there. You should have dialed it in by then. But I'm sure at that point you'll be you're going to look back at these moments and say, man, what a turnaround I've made. But I think you're really hard on yourself, and I'm wondering if that just comes from the era that you grew up in, and the way that you grew up needing to see instant results all the time.
No, yeah, it definitely is. I beat myself up when I work for something and I don't have results yet. And like you said, having that support from your parents, being there to say, you know what, it's okay. Here's a home, here's a roof, here's food. Take your time till you figure out what it is. And I think that, like you said, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to have it figured out. So
I know you're going to have it figured out. You'll probably have it figured out in a couple of years. The hardest part is visualizing what that looks like now and being optimistic that it is coming, that you are creating it. And it's going to take some time. Some of the steps you're already, I feel like, compared to some of the other kids that I've coached or some of the kids surrounding me in my own world that I can compare, you're out there running, you're galloping, and you're just really hard on yourself because you want to be at the finish line already, and you haven't even gotten around the first turn, right?
Yeah. Also, too, I wanted to just make it clear for parents that it's easy. I mean, it's a little bit easier to get where you want when you know what you want. At this age, we barely even know what we want, let alone how to get there. So for me, my biggest struggle is figuring out what I want. Then how am I going to tackle it? Because I don't even know where to start.
But could you be out there trying to get somewhere where you don't know where you're going?
Oh, yeah, totally. That's like what I'm trying to do right now.
You're spinning your wheels right now,
Yeah.
going in 10 different directions. But sometimes you have to be spinning your wheels because you might be spinning your wheels going somewhere and realize when you get there, like, oh my God, I just happened to bump in.
Exactly.
And maybe this is where I'm supposed to be at, and then get an idea. I'd rather you be out there spinning your wheels on 10, 20 different things a week rather than being in your room trying to analyze and figure out. Maybe figuring out what you love to do isn't the answer. Maybe it's not about figuring it out. Maybe it's about getting out there and actually trying new things.
Yeah, experiencing it is how you're going to know that's what you're passionate about, that's what you love.
And you've experienced a couple of different things in the last 6 months, some pretty cool things. And
I have.
I think compared to a lot of kids, you've been getting a lot of opportunities that other kids aren't, and you're actually taking advantage of a lot of them too, which is cool, and I'm really proud of you. All right, stay tuned for more. Listen to Live Coaching with Alex Urbina right here in your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And welcome back to Life Coaching with Alex Urbina right here in your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. In studio today with my co-host Jasmine Urbina. We're talking about vulnerability. And we're actually practicing being a little vulnerable today in studio. And, the last 5 segments or so, we've been kind of breaking down what is vulnerability, how powerful can it be, what are some of the ways that we look at it and see it as a sign of weakness and we limit ourselves, and how does the ego and caring about what other people think about us stop us from really being vulnerable and allowing ourselves to share that part of us. Another thing that came up for me is that vulnerability, whether you're a parent or a child and you're expressing that, helps the other person become more compassionate for what's coming up for you. If you're struggling, let's say like right now, let's say you're struggling and you give yourself permission to be vulnerable about what's really going on, you just caused me to shift as a parent. So let's say let's just do a scenario, right? It's a rough draft scenario, mock scenario. Me and you are kind of going at it. I'm at you all the time about, hey, have you found a job yet? And we're going back and forth, and you're frustrated, and you're struggling, and you finally just sit down. You can't take it anymore, and you just allow your walls to come down. And you start, being vulnerable, and you start sharing all your fears and what's coming up for you. All of a sudden, I can shift off of being that nagging dad of wanting to see some results, and now I shift into compassion. Now, what am I compassionate about? I'm compassionate that you're struggling in a world that's not set up for you to win right now in our economy. And so all that's coming up for me. As you're sharing that, you're caused me to shift. And now I'm showing up in a different way. I'm now giving you advice, and I'm being more patient with you and more understanding. Now you caused that because you're willing to be vulnerable with me. But let's say you don't go to vulnerability and your ego comes out and you're now pushing back against me. All we're doing now is pushing back and forth, just ego versus ego. And all we're doing is pushing each other's buttons until one of us explodes or we both explode. And that's how powerful vulnerability can be when you're willing to trust the other person and open yourself up and share that.
You're right. Going back to the pushing thing, it's either like you said, we could explode. So you could be angry, or one of us could be vulnerable and compassionate, and we could be emotional. And I'm going to choose emotion over anger all the time. I mean, anger is an emotion, but you know what I mean? I'm going to choose being vulnerable over being angry every time.
And you know what? All it takes is one of us to go there.
Exactly.
Whether you as the child or me as the parent can just choose to go there. You know, I can easily go there when you're struggling, and I can, you know, in being present in the moment and conscious, I can go, wait a minute, Alex, you know, maybe she's struggling with something. Maybe there's some fears going on that she's not, you know, sharing with me. So then if I shift into my whole being, into vulnerability, and start sharing with you what some of my fears are, maybe that'll give you permission now to go, all right, well, if you've got some fears, well, Dad, let me share you with mine. And before you know it, we're sitting here just being open, and we're just got this deep connection, and we're able to come to an agreement that I got your back, and you know, you're going to work harder at it, and that kind of thing. And before you know it, we're hugging, and we had a powerful moment, and then you were stronger for it, and you were healed by it, and I was, you know, stronger, and I learned some things about me, and then we're growing in that relationship.
Exactly. I also want to just be able to say too that, you know, if one person's being vulnerable, the other person's not going to continue to be angry. They're not going to continue to push.
I love that. I love that. That's how powerful, you know, vulnerability can be, is that we can cause a shift in the egotistical, you know, pushing and all the, you know, one person, if you realize you're throwing arrows at each other, you're throwing digs, you know, or it's getting really tough or tense, or an argument starting to set in, all it takes is one of you that's conscious and realizes that you can cause that shift. You're the one that can cause that, bringing the walls down and start opening up and sharing, what are some of my fears? Hey, you know what? Some of my fears are that you're going to get stuck in your room, and that your mind is going to, like, you know, create all these fears that you're not going to want to even go out and try anymore. Or some of my fears are that, you know, your little voice is sabotaging you, and, you know, and I want you to come out and connect with us and refuel back with the family. And as I share those two fears, that might inspire you to go, well, you know what, Dad, I got some of my own fears myself. This is what I'm facing. And if we're able to sit down and bring our walls down and share some of those fears, we're able to now have compassion for each other. And it's causing a whole shift in our relationship.
Exactly. I agree. And I also want to just say, too, that now having this conversation, I understand how closing yourself off from everybody, being in your room or hiding or whatever, trying to figure out what you're doing, it's not exactly going to get you further any more than being outside and bonding with your family, your friends, or whatever.
Let's talk about that for a minute. What does your room symbolize for you?
My room's really just like a cave, a place like where I can kind of just hide out and think. And I feel like right now I really just need to think. But I mean, as we're having this conversation, I realize that I really need to experience.
Yeah, because sometimes you can't think yourself out of the box.
Exactly.
Sometimes you actually have to raise your hand up and feel the top of the box, and then grab onto it with one hand, and then put your other hand up and feel the top of the box, and then, you know, grasp with the other hand, and then pull yourself up. Now that takes something deep down within yourself to actually start putting it into motion. You can't think your way out of your problems. You have to start implementing something. I think the number one thing that you can really help yourself is to turn to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm stuck." Basically, go tell on yourself.
Yeah, asking for help, which is hard for me.
Why? Why is it hard for you?
You know, it's because I'm a controller, and I don't want to let go of the idea that I can't do it on my own. And, you know, reaching out even just to my parents.
Can I stop you for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nobody does it on their own.
I know, exactly.
No, listen to me. Nobody does it on their own. Everyone has help all the time. So living it's just like the perfectionist perspective. No one is perfect, or we're all perfect, and nobody does it on their own. We all need help. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. We'll be back every Friday, 1 to 2 p.m. Thanks for joining us on Life Coaching with Alex Urbina. Stay tuned for the Gazette Hour with Doug and John right here on your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS.